It's me, Vera, here to remind you that this is an adult podcast. That means we're going to deal with tough topics. Take a break if you need it, and be kind to yourself, because we sure won't be.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Stitch of Fate, a Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition podcast. As always, I am your storyteller, Mike Martin, and today, for my one-on-one off, I am joined by none other than Duke himself, Bub. What's up, Bub?
Hey man, how's it going?
It's good. I am excited. I don't know what obviously you haven't listened to the Vera one, because we're all recording that in the same day.
Right.
Did you listen to any of the other two, or not yet?
Not yet, no, I've not.
All right, cool. So you're completely in the dark. Not that your timelines are going to cross or anything. I was just curious if you've actually gotten to listen to any of them yet. But I am excited. As with the other three, this is going to be a minor flashback into Duke's past, early in his kindred life, what he was up to, perhaps even what his job was prior to throwing himself in with the Drac Pack as heavily as he has. And with that, hopefully you just have a little bit more insight to how Duke is, or perhaps how his thought process was way back in the day. I've told Bob a little bit about what we're going to be covering today, but just like the other players, just enough, while the rest should be a bunch of discovery for them as well. Our scene fades in with the overwhelming sounds of police sirens and emergency sirens. The darkness replaced with flashing red and blue lights illuminating the entire street. We see these lights about 2 to 3 blocks away, and just themselves, until we hear gentle, what sounds like footsteps from behind, and eventually a stoic, quiet, large figure steps into frame. He stops. We can see over his shoulder just briefly the distant sirens and the lights, the police vehicles, and now clearly some sort of apartment building taped up. But otherwise, the back of this rather plain gentleman is all we can see. He takes a moment, looks at all of the surrounding areas, realizing pedestrians are nowhere to be seen, and the cops have probably been here for an hour or two. And then, with resolve, his stride begins again. Down the sidewalk and further away from the camera, toward this particular crime scene. As he walks into the lights that are illuminating the city streets, and the rain puddles that have been left by a torrential rainstorm, I'm very curious, Bub. Does Duke's fashion change in the year of 1980? Or is he dressing quite the same as we see him in our modern nights?
I think that Duke's appearance at this point would probably be a bit more akin to the aesthetic of the Ventru, coming off of his teachings, I'll say. His sire has encouraged upping the look. There is a certain aesthetic that moves with the Ventru style, and there's a very good chance that he is in what might appear a business-esque suit.
This is going to seem kind of a pedantic question, but is it ill-fitting? Or does it fit tailored well?
It's tailored well, but you can tell that's slightly uncomfortable. There's a certain element about it that makes it look very, very out of place. Even more so on Duke.
Understood. It's almost like, does he almost treat it as though it's like too stiff and restricting in the way he moves?
Very much so, yes.
So we've kind of got the stiff, unnatural walk. And not to say that as we've seen Duke in season 1, the way he moves and the way he's presented in front of others is unnatural in and of itself. But even more so now, it's unnatural mixed with a slight layer of awkwardness in his stride.
It's sort of like watching a marionette forcibly being moved by a puppeteer.
I like it a lot. And as Duke strides past the camera and becomes a smaller, distant figure, Duke, you run through the thoughts in your mind. You're here for a very particular task. For one, you're on cleanup detail. A job was done by a Scourge member of the Camarilla, the new law of the land in New York. And she left quite a mess, you've been told. You were never given a name as to who it was who accomplished this task. And your job is to make sure that the cops leave none the wiser, and the mess left by the kindred is taken care of so the masquerade is not breached. If you're able to take care of this tonight without needing to call for assistance, which you are welcome to do so if you need it, Your sires promised you would be freed from his tutelage, and you are welcome to be a kindred on your own here in New York. Now, how does the Duke feel about that?
Duke appreciates his second lease on life, but I think more than anything, feeling as if he could hit the ground running and being back on his own terms of service, if you will, seems very inviting.
As I imagine it would for someone like Duke, especially with his particular history. Now, as he walks towards this crime scene, we see him once again stop about a block and a half out. How would Duke like to approach this situation? You know the crime scene is somewhere in that building. You're not entirely sure what floor. And not entirely sure what you're even looking for in terms of mess. But the cops on the outside are kind of milling about and discussing with one another. I'm not sure if Duke would walk forward. He does have abilities that allow him to command such presence. Or if he'd keep to himself, look around, or try to find a way in without letting the cops know he's even there.
So, in the scene, is this a hotel building, or what might I be seeing?
Yep. What we're looking at is a 3-story brick apartment building that looks like it's been condemned. Windows are shattered and boarded up. There's graffiti all on the outside, and it's sandwiched between 2 convenience stores. The convenience store on the right is also completely condemned, shattered windows, trash. It looks like it's been looted 9 times over the past week by itself. There's nothing left of value in there. On the left, the convenience store is actually open. It's got those foggy, messy windows with spray painted graffiti on the outside, but metal bars on the inside with the chain link fence even reinforcing it further. And the lights on the inside are lit enough where you can see figures moving about, clearly shopping, but it's hard to see the details past the foggy windows that you have there. Beyond that, it's lots of just condemned and abandoned buildings near and abouts, and a few apartment buildings that are probably still being lived in legally.
I'm going to check to see if there's a fire escape.
Sure. As right at the front, Duke can actually see a fire escape on the 3rd floor that doesn't actually make it down to the 2nd floor. It looks like it snapped, was broken, whatnot. Would you like to get close and circle the building completely?
Yeah.
If you do so, you need to. Are you going to try and stay out of the cops' sight?
Yeah, I think I will.
Okay. So first, then I would like a dex stealth check from you.
Yeah, that's not exceptional.
That's not Duke's strong suit.
Not a little bit, but that's all right. We'll make the most of it. 1 success.
1 success. I will give you an option here.
Okay.
You can take a failure and just be seen, or I can give you a dirty success.
I think I'm going to take the failure on this.
You're going to take the failure on this one? Sure. So Duke does it. It's not so much that Duke's loud. Sure, he's walking through puddles as he passes through, not paying much heed as to what's in front of him, but a puddle splash isn't going to catch the attention of the police. The issue with Duke is that he has no subtlety. He has no need for subtlety. It's never served him beyond his mortal days. But with his gifts now, subtlety isn't something that he's really relied on as much. So it's not that Duke breaks glass or kicks a can or startles the cops. He simply is walking up, passes the block mark, and then very openly turns to a nearby alley and walks down the alley. You're not sure if the cops were looking because you weren't paying too much attention, and so you just started walking down the alley. About halfway to 3/4 of the way down, as you're about to reach the end and turn left to head to the back of the building, assuming the cops didn't see you, you actually hear behind you fast footsteps, splash, 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 coming up behind you. Before a short and curt, Hey, sir, this is a restricted area. Does Duke turn around? Does he stop? How does he respond to hearing the footsteps and some male voice shouting from behind him?
Hearing the voice from behind, knowing that he's in the alley, Duke continues to walk with a bit of a slowed pace in the direction away from the voice and waits for him to approach him.
As you slow your pace but clearly continue to walk, the footsteps don't slow down and the voice only gets louder. Hey, guy in the suit! There's nobody else in this alleyway other than you and me. Turn around now, or I'm going to have to... I don't want to use force.
He'll turn around with almost a confused glance and then look back, kind of like putting a hand up to his chest.
And as you turn around, there's this officer somewhere in his mid-30s, maybe late 30s, and a kind of just a beat cop 80s, a very typical 80s police outfit with the blue cap and the blue suit from top to bottom with a badge up on his left chest. He's got a hand hovering around his pistol by his waist, but not on it. As you stop and turn towards him, there's a little bit of a lax, but he gets about 3 feet to you before he stops, keeps his right hand by his pistol, holds out his left hand with his palm facing you, like, I'm going to need to escort you back this way, sir. There's a crime scene up ahead, and we need you to get the hell out of here. A little space would be good.
A crime scene. Oh, forgive me. I was not aware. What seems to have happened?
Yeah. And as you like go to push, he actually takes a few steps and goes to put his hand on your shoulder.
I think Duke will take this moment to catch his eyes, to take glance if I can.
You absolutely do. He's not trying to avoid your gaze. He literally is walking over to you. And as you're like, oh, what kind of crime scene? He's like, yeah, none of your business, buddy. And he puts his hand on your shoulder, but he's looking at you in the face. And you do catch his eyes for that moment.
Duke has in his right hand a briefcase, which also feels very out of place, and you can definitely tell that there is something more there. He's not really one to carry tools, but the moment that the guy puts his hand on Duke's like back or shoulder, he'll probably pull his left hand up just under the man's chin to guide his eyes up to mine, and I want to mesmerize him.
And he is immortal, so he does not get a resistance check. However, a rouse check, I believe, for mesmerize, it's a level 2.
Yes.
Okay, you get a little hungrier.
Got it.
What do you command him?
Seeing that the fire hatch has not been released from above, I want him to release the side fire hatch so that I can enter the building, and then I'm going to usher a forgetful mind and have him forget this entire scene.
You want him to finish the command before you forgetful mind him, though, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's do the command first. Please, in Duke's word, give the mesmerize command.
Rise to the top of the 3rd floor. Release the fire hatch. I'd like to climb up, and I will meet you there at the top.
He gives a couple of blinks, and he goes, all right, yeah, that's probably a good idea. I'll see you up there. And his when he gripped your shoulder, he reaches it back and gives it a couple friendly pats. And you see him turn, and he begins to leave the alleyway. As he walks out and turns right, and you can hear his footsteps and the splashes grow more distant, the camera spins back to Duke, and it follows him as he very patiently turns back around and continues his normal stride, finishing his walk through the alley, turning left, and passing about 3 buildings on his left before the apartment building is there. You can now see up top there is a fire escape at the back, and it does look like it will reach all the way down if latched, and it leads directly to the roof. About 5 minutes pass before, as you, I'm assuming, kind of just sit back there and wait, tapping your foot. You do hear what sounds like a creaking coming from above, and then some footsteps before he peers over, looks to see that you're there, goes down to a knee, and realizes that it's locked with a chain link lock. There's a moment where he stands and he looks down. He's like, hang on a second. And then he scurries off. Few more minutes pass before he comes back up. He's like, I think I got it. And he waves a crowbar in front of you. And he kind of levers the crowbar in. You see him put his foot, and he just you hear it creaking for a minute before eventually a loud snap and shatter of chain before he stands up. And he's like, there we go. And he climbs down and gives it a kick, and then falls down. Now, that was not quiet, unfortunately. The ladder just kind of slides down and lands with a loud clash. But you can reach it. It's maybe 2.5 feet high above you. You could reach that with a small hop. Or no, you're rather tall. You could probably just reach it and start climbing. I imagine he does so very patiently.
Yes.
Can I get a wits awareness from you, please?
You certainly can. 2 successes.
Not a crit, but 2 successes. You don't hear the footsteps before you hear the voice. You hear the voice as you're halfway up the ladder, as it rounds the corner from the front. What the hell's going on back here? Who the fuck are you? Luther, who the hell are you letting up there? And Luther actually looks down, and he starts to think for a minute. Now, this guy is 7 feet below you, and Luther, now knowing his name, he's 2 stories above you. What does Duke do in this moment?
That's a good question. Does Luther say anything?
No. Wit's insight to even see if he seems confused at this distance, catching his response to that question.
1 success.
Hard to tell how he's reacting from 2.5 stories down.
I think I'll continue making my way up. Since it looks as if the officer is aiding him upward, or at least encouraging, seems to be waiting for him there. I'm gonna wait to get up there and issue command further from that point forward.
So you want to finish the climb, and then you'll worry about dealing with the officer on the ground?
Yes.
Okay. So when you start climbing up, you actually do hear Luther respond to the question. He's like, I'm just helping this guy up to meet me up here.
I'll make haste.
And then there's a moment where he's starting to think what's happening? You still got 1 more round of climbing to get to the very, very top, unless you want to make me a dexterity athletics check to go faster.
I That's
I mean, it's not going to make you go slower. You can just make the roll unless you critical fail, but I doubt that'll happen.
that's fair. We're just gonna go ahead and go for.
This is Duke 2 years into being a kindred. He's not as smooth or as confident in his maneuvers as he is later on in life. So with one, I mean, unfortunately it's a hunger success, but you're just moving as fast as you can. We'll say you'll get there by next round.
Yeah.
There's a minute, and the guy, as you're finishing the climb, the guy on the ground actually looks up. He's like, "But why? Who is this guy? Hang on!" And you see him actually you actually hear him say, "Hang on, let me just get Sarge," and he just starts leaving towards the alleyway. It's at that point, Duke, you reach the top as he's about to turn to leave.
I call down to him, "Officer, forgive me. This officer here, Luther, correct?"
He nods, but as you're trying to pull this guy's attention, could I please get a charisma leadership roll from you?
Charisma leadership. Interesting.
As you're trying to grab this cop's attention on the ground and speak with some sort of authority. 2 successes with 110. You are actually able to stop him enough where he looks back up, curious as to who this person is who ignored him now talking to him.
Okay. Now, since I have his attention, I think what Duke would say here is that I'm operating as a local private investigator, and I am tending to this case. I wish that I could field more information for you, but...
Manipulation subterfuge.
You got it.
Any specialties that would help here?
Maybe coercion.
You have it as intimidate, but I'd allow it.
Okay. All right. So then that's not a...
+1.
It's not terrible. So manipulation and subterfuge.
Yes, sir.
4 successes.
4 successes. Oh, you crit. So a total of 6 successes. With 6 successes, the guy, as you kind of like explain, I'm a private investigator, isn't that right, Luther, and whatnot. The guy on the ground is like, "Oh, why didn't you just say that, Luther?" And Luther just takes a moment. He's like, "Did you say that? I'm sorry, I must have forgot. My bad. Yeah, I'm gonna let him in, take care of things, and then get him out of here. Don't worry, I'll keep my eyes on him." And the guy at the officer at the bottom just kind of gives a awkward nod. Is like, "Next time, just give me a heads up." And he begins to leave. And then Luther turns to you, is like, "Did you tell me that? I don't remember. I'm sorry if I forgot. Wasn't intended."
No harm, no foul, Luther. Do you prefer that I call you Luther, or is there another name?
He just is like, "Luther's fine, and you are?" And he reaches his hand to shake yours.
Duke. I'll extend my hand.
And as he reaches and grabs your hand, obviously it's incredibly cold. He looks down, he's like, "Oh, damn, bad circulation." Huh? And just kind of pulls his hand back. And there's an obvious unease as he can't seem to continue to keep eyesight with you. He'll lock eyes with you, but it never lingers or lasts very long. He always seems to be darting away or sheepishly looking away. After the handshake and that awkward comment about how cold your skin is, there's a beat before he's like, "Oh, yeah, come here, way in down here." Important to note, and as he walks you over to this hatch in the ceiling, this metallic trap door, this was locked. It wasn't unlocked until, well, I came and got you. And he lifts up the thing with his hands. There's the crime scene's on the 2nd floor. If I'm going to be honest with you, we don't have any fucking idea what happened, how this person got in, what their motive is. It's a damn mess.
Mm-hmm. Are you needed downstairs, Luther? It would be quite nice to have additional eyes on the scene.
And he kind of steps back, chews on his cheek for a minute as he looks over the roof at the 3 or 4 other cops that are milling about down there. He's like, "I'm sure they got things. I'm sure they're fine. Yeah, I'll do what I can. I don't know how I can help, though."
Well, why don't you walk me through what you found thus far? I'd like to compile some notes.
Sure. So, first thing to note, as he begins to lower himself down, all the entryways were locked. I have no fucking idea how they got in. And he starts climbing all the way down until eventually he puts his feet down on the ground. I'm assuming you follow in suit.
Yes.
You're greeted with a 3rd floor that was once 2 separate apartments, but the walls themselves have been vandalized, destroyed, knocked down, and it's more of a improvised open floor plan now. You can see where the bathrooms were because the toilets are still there, and one of them still has a sink there, but no running water as the other sink is torn out and there seems to be no water spewing from the pipes. As you look down at the floor, there's a few areas within the floor that that you could see down into the 2nd floor, but the holes are so small you'd have to get on your hands and knees and put your face up against the hole to really get a good look. He continues to walk through, stepping over broken pieces, crunching horsehair plaster beneath his boots, and stepping over broken glass as you can hear him unavoidably crunching on other glass instead, reaching to the other end of this area that leads to a door that opens up into a typical apartment hallway. where it's a kind of a shared stairwell that goes down to the bottom floor. And on each floor, there's one door for leading to the apartment that corresponds with that door. I should say, when you walked into this, it's not 2 apartments on left and right. It was 2 bedrooms on the left and right that were destroyed. Sorry.
Right.
I think I said apartments. I didn't mean.
So we have no method of entry as far as it can be seen.
He just kind of shakes his head. Nah, I can't figure it out. It doesn't seem like the boys have any idea, at least not yet. And as you step down all the way into the second floor, this place is much more put together. The walls are still intact, though there's still trash everywhere, graffiti, and there's still holes in some of these walls. But there's still walls still stand. The only notable hole that you see is that on the bedroom on the left, there's actually a hole in the wall that leads into the stairwell, maybe about 4 feet in diameter, that anybody could squeeze. You could potentially squeeze or come through. But there's no stairwell in that area. The stairwell has collapsed and crumbled. So to get to there, it would need to be a hell of a leap.
But it's not impossible.
Not for a kindred, it's not. It'd be hard for a mortal. They could do it. But the police officer still, this is just things that you're picking up as you're walking through. He stops at the bedroom on the right, where the door is actually kind of lagging open a little bit. And as he stops on the outside, he doesn't actually look in. He stops short, and he just kind of points with his thumb at crime scenes in there.
Does it make you uneasy?
Oh, I don't like looking at dead bodies, no.
I understand. Corpses and cadavers can do a lot to most men and women.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions, shout. I'll try to do my best, but I spent enough time in there for tonight.
Thank you, Luther. If there's anything else that you can shake loose, I'd be happy to hear from you.
He nods. Well, if you come up across any new information, you want to throw it my way. Wouldn't hurt me, none.
Did you investigate that opening in the wall?
He looks over his shoulder. What do you mean investigate? It's a hole in the wall.
Certainly, but you said that there was no other point of entry into this facility, at least as far as you could tell.
No, and he looks over the hole in the wall. He's like, I mean, there's no stairs at that hole, but moreover, to get to there, they'd have to come from the bottom or the top floor, and both were locked. I don't know how they fucking got in.
It's fair. It's a fair assumption and an earnest guess, but...
And then he walks over to it, a good distance away, and he actually peers out it. And unless they had a ladder, I don't know how the hell they got up here if they're in... and he just kind of just gestures to it, and like, I don't know.
I glance out. What do I see? Are there walls? Is it just a dead drop straight down?
It's a dead drop straight down where there used to be, you can see if you look up, you can see the start of the stairwell on the 3rd floor. It only goes down like 1 or 2 stairs before it all is crumbled. And as you look down, you can see 1 stair on the 1st floor that goes from the actual floor to the stairwell that's still intact. Everything in between is gone.
What's the distance between that?
Oh, it's 1 story. So I don't know.
A story is about 11 feet.
11 feet, then about 11 feet down.
Okay. But there is a walls nearest?
Yep.
Okay. Luther, are you familiar with free running?
Luther just looks at you with a raised eyebrow. Free what?
Free running. It's... Never mind. It's a movement, probably meant for a different time, something I've been studying. Have you seen a cat bound from wall to wall before or leap off things with quite the dexterity or grace?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well... You're familiar with things like the Ringling Brothers, then, circus acts.
Yeah, what are you getting at?
It wouldn't take much for a person to leap from wall and up. That's a height of 11 feet. It might seem justifiably out of the norm, but I'm almost 7 feet tall, and I can reach up to a height of 10, almost 11 feet without jumping.
Well, I guess that explains why the door was locked to the apartment, but how the fuck did they get into the building?
And that's something to be discovered.
And he shakes his head. All right, well, I'll stand guard there, Duke. Let me know what you discover.
Thank you, Luther. I appreciate that. And I'll move over to the body.
You step into the room. The scene that's greeted you is interesting.
Oh, hi. It's me, Vera. While you're taking a break, take a moment to visit dieharddice.com. Die Hard Dice is a sponsor of this little podcast. They make what we do possible. During checkout, make sure to use the code STITCH-JAN and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. And we get a little cut for our own resources. Sounds like we only roll with the best.
Can I get a wits investigation roll as we see Duke? And yes, criminology would absolutely apply here.
3 successes.
3 successes. Duke, as he stands into this room and gazes upon what is a rather bloody scene. Perhaps this is the first time we see, since in this particular session with Duke, what you could consider calm fall over him. It's not that the suit still is no longer making him look or act awkward, but up to this point, he's been very stiff and rigid. But as he steps into this crime scene and there's a body in front of him, and his eyes kind of cast across, and he begins to slowly just kind of circle the room, there is a general change in his demeanor. The way he carries himself shifts, and the way he kind of looks over everything is meticulous, slowly, and with clear passion. Duke, what you see before you first is a body of a young lady, maybe in her early 20s. It jumps out at you first because her eyes are missing completely. Blank, bloody sockets stand in place of eyes. And as you go over and inspect the body, can I get a intelligence medicine check?
1 success.
You could re-roll one of those if you wanted to. Your call.
Nah, I'm not too worried about it.
It's hard to tell what the cause of death was. But the one thing that is obvious is it was clearly through loss of, or I should say, it's clear that the way she died was through blood loss. The eyes removed from her sockets, the countless cuts that cover her from head to toe, making her almost indistinguishable that she's not just a sack of meat and some sort of was once a female. But as you look over the body, you look by the feet, and both of her Achilles tendons were cleanly cut. An enormous amount of blood was lost down by her ankles and her feet. But as you continue to examine the bodies, you also come across the eyes. They sit in her mouth. Her mouth had been gently hanging open, and you caught a glimpse of something that didn't quite look like teeth. And as we watch, you kind of stick your thumb into her mouth, under her teeth, and you hear kind of just of her mouth opening. The eyes kind of hang loose openly in her jaw.
What's the state of the atrophy or the muscle? Does it seem to be like it's like in a state of rigor? Is it very difficult?
How long does rigor mortis take to come into play again? It's a few hours?
That much I'm not entirely sure, but if there's already some resistance, then I know that this is the scene is getting colder.
Yes, it's at least been a few hours. That much is easy for you to tell. But I'm curious to what his reaction is just seeing this body in the way it is. It's slumped on its side, looking like it was sat up against the wall. And it looks like that she likely died sitting up because of the way she's kind of just listed to the side and how her body is positioned.
Does it appear as if she had been sat there or if she chose to sit there?
I would like you to make me another intelligence investigation check, as this would require more than just the body.
4 successes.
With 4 successes and this thought comes into Duke's mind. He kind of stands up, gazes around the area, and kind of traces her there. And there's a lot of blood there. Actually, as you look around, there was a ton of blood over by the doorway. A large pool of it had kind of coagulated. But there's a clear drag mark from that pool to the center of the room. And then there's less blood, but enough to indicate that it's likely she was sat there.
Interesting.
Something to note about the eyes is that one seemed half swallowed.
One seemed half swallowed. Okay. Being very careful, gingerly removing the eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
What seems to be the state of the eyeball? Are they like perfectly perforated? Have they just been removed?
They look like they have been professionally removed. There's no perforation or punctures on the actual eyeball itself. It seems that they were pulled from the socket. Perhaps a tool? Perhaps not.
Can I look closely at the eyeball, even if it means that I have to start breaking out some of my own tools here? I want to see specifically if there are any sort of marks or indentations, something that seems out of place, not like teeth, but the method of pluck.
What we see Duke do is he kind of, now realizing he needs to sit and take a moment with these and look into these into deeper detail, he kind of sits down on his knees, rests down, leans back on his feet, and he places his suitcase gently on the floor to his right. We hear the locks unlatch, and we watch as Duke gently and slowly opens up the suitcase. What do we see? Or what does the camera catch just as the suitcase begins to open?
It seems to be a series of tools. It's not like what you would expect from like a hitman's case where everything is sitting like perfectly in place. Everything seems to at least have some use, and most anything that is of importance or metallic is probably bound in some sort of like baggy or plastic covering. There are some, I mean, it's cleanup, so he's probably got some sort of trash bags or the akin to it, some sort of like rubberized or something to handle the situation.
Of course.
He might even have like a small like broom pan, since he's thinking that he might have a kindred to clean up.
Certainly. Duke would look to that part after, but the body immediately caught his attention. He has particular interests that would catch his eye first. And you begin to look and examine these eyes in close detail. Once again, I'm now going to need a wits investigation. Your criminology, of course, will play a +1. And we'll even say the tools that you ended up bringing will also add an additional +1. So a total of +2. You can reroll 3 of those if you'd like.
I will. 3 successes.
A few things that you kind of dictate or not dictate or able to pull from your examination of these eyeballs. It seems that the eyeballs that were, or at least one of them was kind of halfway down the throat, likely meant to be swallowed. However, the body passed before the eyeballs before she would have had the ability to actually swallow them and actually take them down, which is why you find one kind of stuck halfway down the throat and the other one just really far in the back of the mouth. Moreover, you do find slight indentations way towards the back of the actual eyeball that would be towards like the actual cord that attaches it to the spinal cord and whatnot, or wherever the fucking eyeball attaches to, because I don't know personally. But there's enough just to show that there had been some pressure, enough the pressure as it was pulled. It was certainly a tool. It wasn't a knife. There are 2 indentations on the left and the right on each of the eyeballs, so something went in on each side.
Duke would probably note that it's not a matter of tensile strength. This didn't just snap from sheer pressure. Something actually pincered this down and severed this.
And so we see Duke kind of taking notes quietly to himself.
He wants to peer over the rest of the body as well. What do we see here additionally?
Simply because you don't have the time, an uncountable amount of cuts that cover her body from top to bottom. Gashes from her forehead, on her nose, her lips, her cheeks, her chest and stomach, arms, legs, thighs. She is cut to ribbons.
On the back as well, though?
No, just the front.
Just the front. That's important. Duke will definitely note that, probably even underlining it. Not even on like the back of the legs, but it's all the front.
Mm-hmm.
The eyes were removed.
Yep.
How do the hands look? Hands and feet?
The Achilles heels have been, it looks like purposefully sliced. It's the only thing on the back of the body that's cut.
Do the hands appear to have any kind of bruising, like they were bound?
Not on her.
Okay. And at any point while glancing around, do I see a pile of ash?
Now that Duke's kind of taken his fill of the body, he rises from his knees and looks around, and right off to her left-hand side, off to your right, maybe a foot or 2, there is a pile of ash that has been disturbed. There's clearly some wind has probably gotten in here and brushed some aside. You're not sure if any wild rodents got involved or if the cops themselves were curious and just passed it by. But as you walk over and kind of put your hand through, this is remnants. This is familiar remnants. There's bits of skull and bone in there that you are familiar with as you run it through your fingers. But a layman cop, dark on a night where it's pouring rain without specialists around, there's no way they would know.
Well, I'll make haste with cleaning up the ash.
We see you take the dustpan, broom, baggies, and whatnot, and you very quickly are able to scoop this up and zip tie it and kind of put it into I imagine your briefcase. The rest, you just scattered little bits that you can't, you blow to the wind and mix amongst the trash. New York's finest in the World of Darkness world aren't as detailed unless they absolutely need to be.
But my interest, I think, still lies with the woman.
Sure.
Particularly, like I'm peering over the wounds on the body, and I want to see the depths of the wounds, and I want to look to see where the deepest wound is.
I want another wits investigation check.
You got it.
Ooh, beautiful, messy critical, but that doesn't matter too much in this situation.
7 successes.
7 successes total for this particular one. And as Duke once again realizes, okay, the kindred's there, and he quickly cleans up the mess, he once again goes back to the body, kneeling closer to it now, almost like carefully tending to it as he lifts up the arm and he drags his finger across the cuts down the face. And as you examine, you do realize you were correct. At the very top of the skull, the cuts are maybe an inch deep. But as it goes down the body, like perfectly. Every cut seems to get a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. And when you get to the bottom, the legs, the thighs, they're somewhere between 3 and 5 inches deep, about 3 inches deep. It seems they get maybe 3 to 4 inches total deep by the bottom, starting by like half an inch at the top, 3 to 4 inches by the bottom.
Are there any chairs in the room?
No.
And are there wounds on the shins or feet?
Yes.
Is it safe for me to assume that this person may have been standing?
With the way that the wounds lie on this particular person, the victim was certainly sitting because of the way the cuts kind of trace down the body, and then they kind of skip the knee to shin area and just hit the bottom soles of the feet. It's likely that the person who did the killing was standing.
Right.
The victim, however, unlikely. It's even hard to tell as you once you kind of take this all into account because of where the wounds are. It doesn't look like this person was defending themselves. It's possible they were already dead when this was happening.
Right. It was possible that they were dead, but Duke, I'm almost assuming that Duke does not think that that is the case. If their body's already like naturally trying to swallow, but before it could hit the epiglottis,
you're not sure if they was naturally trying to swallow or if they were shoved back there and fingers were crossed that they would swallow.
Right.
It's hard to know.
Interesting. It definitely appears to be some sort of a blade.
You know that it was a kindred. You know it was a kindred. You know it was a scourge.
Yeah.
That was here cleaning up after a scourge job. But usually, not all the time, a mortal's not always found. Usually it's a go clean up the dust. This is particularly, the reason this is giving you your freedom is because there was collateral that you need to take care of, and you're doing it by yourself. The mortal, the cops, that's not always the case.
Where the body was drugged from.
Looks like just outside the doorway.
I want to stand where I feel like that point was, where the blood started.
We see Duke stand up, slowly walk out of the bedroom and stand over the coagulated pool of blood that pooled from, as Duke would assume, somewhere, probably from the Achilles heel wound.
And then I want to take a look around the room.
Okay.
To see if anything appears out of place, particularly a blood splatter.
Give me another wits investigation +1.
4 successes.
4 successes is quite a lot. And as we watch Duke once again trace in his mind this crime scene, look around, it becomes even more clear now as you stand where you believe maybe she was standing or the scourge was standing during the action. Because around the bodies on both sides, or rather around the bodies on the left-hand side very specifically, blood is splattered all across the wall, but none on the right side of the bodies. It's all on the left side. And there's even blood like on the clothes and even like the matted in the hair of the girl from maybe from the vitae of the kindred before it got dusted itself. But the blood is all on a singular side of the room, indicating that maybe if this person was using a hand, they were consistently swinging from the right to left.
Correct.
But it's almost like machine work, the cuts.
Right.
A half inch to 4 inches.
That's what I wanted to investigate, particularly on the body. I wanted to see where the point, what it looks like the point of interest is likely your largest point of depth, where the exit wound is probably going to be the most shallow.
Yep. With the amount of successes you've rolled, the number of times you've crit, as we watch Duke kind of almost piecing this together, he can see it. Maybe and first we see a visage of this unknowable kindred using a weapon, but the blood splatter doesn't make sense. And then the way the cuts go down and trying to match up, we see different variations of how this potential killer did their action here, until the only thing that makes sense is one of two options. One, they had a machine that just spun from top to bottom and just got deeper every single time, or the person themselves are so well trained, and kindred, that they themselves were the ones spinning in the process, nicking them from top to bottom. Can I get an intelligence politics roll from you, please?
Yes.
Okay, you got 2 successes. You're not entirely sure who or how or why some kindred would be spinning, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. You've seen celerity in action. You've seen many different bizarre, impossible feats.
Duke has some ideas. I think right away he would begin to narrow down the possible series of suspects. Maybe not down to the individual, but particularly to the clan.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely he would rule it down to potentially Ventru or Toreador. Someone who could command an individual to stay still. That's his immediate thought.
Sure.
The powers of persuasion are, I think, ignominiously like the most powerful disciplines in his mind. So someone to have been alive through this willingly, if that's the case, is they were forced to watch to a degree, but not actually see. There's no wounds on the rear side of the individual. So this was an audience to a forbidden event. They're spinning. The wound entry is the depth of what appears to be a very thin blade. Its exit seems to be the most shallow in a rise up. So his guess is that they're either an incredibly short person, which is incredibly unlikely, or they're a very nimble person with blades near their waist and or their feet. He thinks dancer, which leans to Toreador, but he's not entirely convinced because, subverting expectations, Duke is a Ventru, but he's the least Ventru of Ventrus. So right now he leans Toreador, but I think he admires the work and the job that is before him because it's only providing more questions than not.
Duke has been to many a cleanup site. This is certainly one of, if not the most unique he has come across in his entire unlife up to this point.
I think you probably even hear in his mind. I'm not sure how close Luther is, but
Luther's kind of, you hear him occasionally pacing out there. He's sometimes close, sometimes not.
What a bizarre signature.
You say something as you hear the voice from a distance in the footsteps get closer.
Luther, please, if you would, give me a moment of your time.
Yeah, head on out here if you don't mind.
I think it's best that if you stepped in here, you can look away from the body.
There's a definite 1 second pause before you just hear a footstep and he walks in and he's very, very clearly trying to keep his gaze on you.
Follow my vision, Luther.
He's trying, but much like before, there's a discomfort as he looks at you and he wants to look away, but looking away is almost worse. And it's very difficult for him to find a place to focus. And it's very obvious to Duke that he can't.
Duke's still probably very early on into what's happening, especially with things based in his previous life, knowing that this is a detective of some sort or even a street cop. I get it a lot, Luther. It's okay. I probably look like someone that was televised. Can't remember his name. Edward or something like that.
He looks up to you for a minute, and there's this clear look of are you about to say what I do not want to hear?
And I look like him. Promise, not the same person. That guy's in jail anyway.
Can you give me a manipulation persuasion check? But because of your flaw, you get a -2.
Yeah.
On talking to this man. 4 successes.
I can't do a lot better than that.
Especially against him, like I said, against a mortal. That's pretty much as best you can do without critting. He's like, yeah, you read my mind. So,
Get it a lot. It's fine. We'll focus on the subject at hand.
Yeah, please. Can we just get that over with? And he tries to force a chuckle.
So how many crimes like this have you investigated, Luther?
Not quite a lot like this, but I've seen my share of bodies.
I too have seen a fair share in my line of work. It's not something I'm incredibly proud of, but it's something that you get used to. So I've decided to take some liberties here to investigate very personal aspects of the crime that is in the nature of my job. I'm a private investigator, and I seek out particularly heinous crimes, or at least those that are brought to me. Those are the ones that I select. In this case, this woman appears to have been a target, but not immediately what I can tell is important. While I can't tell you who's done this, I can tell you some things that might help you in your investigation.
I'm all ears.
Whatever seems to have happened to this woman.
He actually takes out a notepad and a pencil.
There are many strikes upon this woman's body, but none on the rear side of the individual. Most of them appear to be midsection, breast, neck, shoulder area. What appears to be an incline from the midsection upward, meaning the point of what appears in my mind is the impact or strike comes from about midline waist. Very short individual or someone who seems to be deft in dexterous movement.
So we're looking for a short individual somewhere. What could you give me? Do you have an estimated height?
I believe that there is some miscommunication here. The wounds itself might come from a short individual or someone who is wielding or brandishing a weapon on the lower extremities of their body.
Gotcha. That's kind of fucking weird.
Yes. What's even more weird is that the eyeballs seem to have been removed from the socket.
Yeah, we noticed.
Did you discover them?
Yeah, in the mouth.
One further back than the other.
Honestly, I looked at it, went, there are the eyeballs, and didn't look any further.
Very good. I understood as such. Did you see the wounds on the rear side of the ankle?
He kind of like gives like a long blink and a shrug. I didn't personally notice, but I don't. Maybe the boys did.
So to set the scene for you, this person's eyes were removed, shoved into their mouth. Their ankles were cut at the Achilles tendon so that they couldn't remove themselves from the situation, and they were forced to watch something that they couldn't see.
That sounds fucked. You thinking we're looking at a serial killer? Just be real with me.
It seems that there is at least a method to their madness. It might be a serial killer if there seems to be more of these popping, but from what I can tell in my understanding of such, unless they have a series of these deaths in which you would know if you'd seen anything like this, anything ringing any bells.
He just shakes his head. Nah, first time anything like this.
Well, I believe that this is the signature, Luther.
He kind of gives an exasperated sigh. Fucking great. Well, Duke. And he kind of slaps his notebook shut. Certainly taught me more about this crime scene than we learned in the past 3 hours. You certainly are a professional. You got a card?
No, but I do live here in the city. And if you're with the force, and I can find your precinct, and looks at the badge.
Yeah, it says 57th Precinct.
You shouldn't have a problem locating you. My name is Duke Premind, and while I am a PI, I tend to stay very quiet.
He, again, now holding eye contact with you a little longer than most people do, he reaches out his hand. Luther Prescott. Officer Prescott. Luther,
Pleasure, Mr. Prescott.
Clearly exasperated and very tired now that you have you've had a moment to talk with him without pressure of anybody around. You can see the bags under his eyes, clearly weighing heavily. It seems to be 2 different ones. And he just kind of reaches up after he shakes your hand and rubs his eyes. It's just been a long night and I really appreciate the help. This is going to make paperwork way fucking easier.
New York is dangerous, Luther. Make sure you lock your doors on this evening.
Yeah, thanks. Especially if, we have somebody who might do this again. Well, Mr. Premind, I guess you'll find me, which is kind of weird.
Well, you can't miss me. I'm a sight for sore eyes.
He gives you a very nervous chuckle, and he puts his hand on your back. He's like, not to hurry you out of here, but we got to get some work done, and the boys are probably going to get annoyed waiting for you to finish up in here before they can do their thing.
Understood.
And he ushers you out back toward the top as the stairwell down is not there, and down the fire escape back down to the back area where you entered. Still not entirely sure how she got, or how this particular scourge or kindred got into the building, but at the very least, the crime scene itself, you're very confident you have at least 90% of it correct. And as you walk out of the alley, just before you leave it, he turns around and he's like, thanks again, Ed. Genuinely, that's going to be a lot of helpful information.
Have a good evening, Luther.
You too. And from there, he'll turn and walk right outside of the alley, leaving you in the alleyway as he makes his way back to join the rest of the officers. The camera lingers with Duke. And there's does he watch as Luther just rejoins for a while quietly to himself, just in the shadow of the alleyway?
I think Duke would wait for a while and watch him. You can tell that there is a certain admiration for the man, largely because he's earnest, and he wasn't afraid to approach even a figure as daunting, particularly as Duke. And I think this is the moment that Duke will likely be so impressed that he wants to follow this man and see exactly what he's capable of, see the type of grit that he's made of.
So while in Duke's mind, he stands there and watches him out of admiration and just genuinely being impressed, the camera just watches as a stoic, non-moving Duke sits in the alleyways. The only thing flickering is his eyes as his eyes trace and track Luther, moving back to his officers, and then eventually, after talking a few minutes, into the building where Duke loses sight. And as all the officers file in save one, we see Duke finally blink once, turn, enter the sidewalk, and begin to walk away from the crime scene. The camera lingers right there as Duke gets smaller and smaller until he becomes an unknowable dot amongst others on that pedestrian walkway. And that's where this one shot will fade to black. A little brief glimpse into Duke's history there.
Wonderful.
That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
It was a fun little kind of whodunit for Duke, but that was enjoyable to watch him piece it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope everybody who watched enjoyed it. I hope you have a little bit more of a depth and understanding of Duke. I really enjoyed seeing him interact with Luther for the first time and bringing him kind of into the fold. And seeing what you as Bub and as Duke have like pieced together Vera's little crime scene that she left for you last episode.
Hopefully I wasn't too far off the mark.
Not at all. It was well done. I hope when you listen to it fully, and you go through all these one-offs, like you're proud of what Duke was able to piece together there. It was very impressive.
I'm only sad that I wasn't able to find the Victrola. I wanted to see if I could find the placement for that, but I wasn't able to. My rolls were just not with it today.
Not today. You had a lot of like good rolls or terrible rolls. It was hot or cold for you, and that was it.
Makes it exciting, man. The failure part was fun.
Yeah, it's true. But that actually is it. The last one shot, at least for now, of our little coterie. Next time you see an episode here on Stitch of Fate, it will be episode 1 of season 2. We will see you then. Thanks again, everybody, patrons and listeners alike. We appreciate you a great deal, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.